What's going on, everybody? It's Jonathon Howe hanging out here for the Southern Ontario Dirt Show podcast. Feeling good on this week here. It's another episode where I'm interviewing a sportsman driver who just got their first win after holding off Cody McPherson on a late restart. Kind of sort of feels like same song, different verse, but different story as well. And it's great to get to the story of Dan McKay on this one. I'm looking forward to sharing this interview with you guys. As far as what we've got planned for the rest of the season, kind of really enjoying these interviews. So if you've got a guest suggestion, don't hesitate to reach out for who you want to hear from or who we should have on the Southern Ontario Dirt Show podcast. If it's your favorite Ohsweken driver, Merrittville driver, Ransomville driver, maybe someone from Buxton or Brighton as well, don't hesitate to reach out and give us a request for who you want to hear on the Southern Ontario Dirt Show podcast. And now, like I said, Dan McKay is our guest this week. We also had Ashton Winger on the Dirt Beers podcast that Beef and I do. Beef off this week from Sods Pod. We've both been pretty busy for the summertime and squeezing in shows where we can, when we can. I think we're going to take Dirt Beers off again next week. Hopefully I can get another Sods Pod out next week. We'll see how that goes. Big show for my band next week, Green White Checkered. We're at the Warehouse Concert Hall in St. Catharines. So a lot of attention and focus is going into that one. If you want to grab a ticket, don't hesitate to do that. You can find tickets available, warehouseconcerthall.com, or send me a message at Jonathon on air or here, and I will get you a ticket sorted out for the show with Green White Checkered, my band, and Joey Brix's band and Alex Hobson's band, a part of that one. Going to be a lot of fun, and this interview was a lot of fun. It was great to chat with Daniel McKay, get to know him a little bit more, and hopefully he's far from the only. This is the first time winner that we see on the podcast. Here he is now, Daniel McKay on the Southern Ontario Dirt Show podcast. All right, joining me on this week's edition of the Southern Ontario Dirt Show podcast. Kind of the same song, different verse here, as we have another first-time sportsman winner on the year at Merrittville. Daniel McKay joining the show. How's it going, my friend?
It's going really good. Pretty pumped about last week. Pretty pumped to be on your podcast here. Been watching kind of since you started, and I never thought I'd make it on here, but here we are.
Hey, you know what? You earned it with a great performance on Saturday night. First off, though, I do want to check on something because I always see your name like written on all the sheets and everything as Daniel, but then everybody in the tower says Dan McKay. So do you have a preference between Daniel and Dan?
No, it doesn't matter to me. My grandfather has always been Dan, so I always just sign in as Daniel, but
Yeah.
Dan or Daniel doesn't matter.
Yeah, see, I get the same thing because I'm Jonathon, but my grandpa was John. So,
Right.
around the family, it's like I am Jonathon, but everybody else calls me John. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I totally get it. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, glad to have you on the show and glad to catch up with you. First off, let's talk about the win. Like, take us through Saturday night, your view, your vantage point of things, and how it all came together. Because, you've had runs, I would say, like that in the past where you've gotten the track position to start up front, had good efforts, had good pace in the car, and for one reason or another, it just doesn't quite come together. But everything lined up on Saturday night for you.
Yeah, so Friday night we were in the garage late, as usual. Me and the old man bickering back and forth about setup. I'm not quite happy with the numbers. I can't quite figure out why. Earlier in the season, we ripped the shock tower off the car at Ohsweken, and the car never quite was the same since then. So we decided to sleep on it. Woke up early the next morning, sent Randy Williamson a text kind of explaining what I think the problem might be. And he called me right away and walked me through a couple things to check. So car came out of the trailer, back on the scales. We kind of tweaked some things around, and I said, well, it's about 4 o'clock. We got to head to the track. We're going to run with what we got. Hopefully it's better. Went out for hot laps and did not time well. I usually don't time well in hot laps. I don't know. The 13M curse, I guess. I can't time. Yeah. Heat race went well. We started on the front row, finished second. Car felt strong. So told the old man before we even got to the track, I'm not going to touch a thing all night. We're just going to put a new set of tires on the car for the feature. I think we might be dialing ourselves out of the park for the long run. These cars are very easy to do that. There's so many adjustments and whatnot. And yeah, we, I was getting a little nervous. They graded the track in intermission. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, Taylor won last week. I watched the drone footage. And I said, you just powerhoused around the top. So I'm going to try the top tonight. Normally I run the bottom. Um, and yeah, we went out on the first lap. I got in the first corner, a car hooked up, and like, oh, that was pretty cool. Let's do this again. Just try to keep my line, keep hitting my marks, and, running, I think it was 22 laps before caution.
Hmm.
That was good. That let us stretch out, take some pressure off. But of course, you get, with those final laps, you see the caution come out, and you're like, I've been here before. We've ran up front. We've had a caution. And, Cody's coming. I mean, he's just
Yeah.
been so good this season. And, but I looked on the leaderboard and saw he was kind of a couple cars back, and it was single file. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to keep running the top, hit my marks, and what happens, happens. And yeah, we had just enough steam. He got, just enough steam to get in front of him at the line there and take home the win. And it was, kind of surreal. Even rolling around under caution before I came off the track, I really didn't believe that we did it. But kind of sunk in as soon as we rolled into tech and people started running up to the car. And yeah, it was, for not being too confident in the car to begin with the night, it's pretty awesome to be able to do that.
Yeah, and it's funny too because I feel like the current class of sportsmen, there's so much talk about obviously Cody McPherson and the way he dominates the class and everything else, and the fact that you guys have to catch up. But I think what you're seeing now with Taylor is that it's not necessarily that you guys are that much behind or you're that far behind in terms of setup. It's just like everything has to come together exactly right. And, the more and more experience you guys get under your belt, especially when you find something that works and that you hit on it, that's really the ticket. And I guess just from your own personal development, how much do you feel like, I guess, you kind of mentioned that you had some problems after that shock tower came off this year, but how much do you feel like you have gotten better over the years at understanding what you need out of the car, and how much closer do you think you are to being a top contender than maybe when you first started out at Merrittville and in the sportsman division in general?
Yeah, I would say we've came a long way. When I first moved up into sportsman from mini stock, we didn't even have a set of scales.
Mm.
Um, we never intended to get into sportsmen as soon as we did. We were kind of planning on running up the ranks. We had a Hoosier stock. There were some murmurs about Hoosier stock potentially not running at Merrittville around that time when we were going to move up. And the opportunity came to trade my Hoosier stock with Jeff Larmett for his sportsman. So the 601 street stock that he runs was originally my car. And yeah, we had no idea what we were doing. You come from mini stock with maybe 150 horsepower up into like a 350, 400 horsepower sportsman, bigger tires, everything's going faster. And yeah, we were kind of way over our head. And, I feel like we learned everything the hard way. We blew up like 4 crate motors one season. But my grandfather has always told me, like, if you're going to do something, you're going to do it the best you can. So we never really let anything stop us. We always found a way to get another motor, get out there, get the seat time. And honestly, I think the best thing for us was we ran about 3/4 of a season at Ransomville in the novice about 2 years ago. And that class is like amazing for guys to get seat time. Fewer cars, a little more spaced out, but you do have some good competition there. And just learning how to drive the car, learning how to set up the car is huge. And, after that, we had some decent success over there, a couple podiums. And, I felt like last year we were kind of near the end of the season, being able to get up into the top 10, couple top 5s, and really starting to figure out what I like in a car, how I want to drive it. And, we just try to keep the momentum rolling. Beginning of the season, it was kind of similar. We started up front, had a good lead. We went green to checker that night, and Cody got us about halfway through, and I was kind of fading back. We held on for a top 3, and like I would have been happy with that as our best finish all year, because that's like leaps and bounds of where we've been, and to be able to actually win at Merrittville is still kind of unreal to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you referenced that point earlier in the year, because that was for me when I started to kind of take stock of your program. I was like, okay, well, you know, yes, you had the track position and started up towards the front of the field, but it's one thing to have track position, but you see guys who have maybe not the best program, or they're relatively new to whatever division they're racing in. And if they start up front, they generally either pull out a line and they're right to the back, or they're getting freight trained by you're holding your own now. All of a sudden, you've got that pace in that 13M, and it's looking strong. But what else do you guys need, to keep going forward in the year? You're sitting 11th in points right now. You started all 9 features this year, 2 top 5s, and including that win for the season. What more do you guys think you need on your side to keep moving up those standings? Because it's yes, Cody's way out in front, but the points battle is very exciting actually throughout most of the top
Yeah.
10 in the sportsman right now. Like, you're only 90 points off of second place, which is kind of crazy to think for an 11th place points position right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, on any given Saturday, there's a handful of guys that can start on that front row and have a shot like we did. And, I think that's one of my favorite things about sportsmen is like we have so much talent out there and it's challenging. And, for us to keep the momentum going, I think the biggest thing is just keeping the car clean. We kind of got in a couple wrecks here and there this season that have kind of set us back in the points battle. And we're really focusing on not adjusting ourselves out of the park. I'm focusing a lot on this year on coming to the track with a base setup and just driving the car and kind of adjusting my driving to how the car is, because the chances of you nailing that setup every night are like extremely slim. So there's a lot to learn with driving these cars about how to, take what you have and still get track position. And that's really what we're focusing on. We know we have a good car. We have a really good maintenance program this year. The car is like probably the best equipment I've had my whole racing career, not even just sportsman. So I know I have the car there. It's just trying to keep from myself, really, from adjusting us out of the park. Like, you always want that little bit more, but we're just really focusing on driver development this year, and like watching the drone videos with our lap times out and taking notes. What Joe does with the drone at the track, that's like gold for drivers. I talked with my grandfather about it, and they never had nothing like that back in the day. It was trying to remember, and so much goes on out there you can't remember, and to be able to watch it on the big screen. We put up a nice big TV in the shop. We sit there with the lap times. We watch it. I write notes. Okay, this lap was 2/10 slower, and I didn't like my entry on this corner, or I think I overdrove it. And just trying to keep mental tabs on my driving has been huge. And I really think that we can kind of keep that momentum rolling, and have a little bit of luck on our side and stay out of some of the incidents on track. I think we have a chance to get back into the top 10 and, maybe finish decent in the points this year.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right there. You're right in the fight for sure. And, there's still lots of time left in the season, as even though we're into July now, there's still lots of time, especially if you're going to get those wins and get those opportunities to start towards the front, or get the opportunities to run with the big boys, right? So you mentioned, you become a real student of the sport in terms of how you're studying. And you're far from the only guy I've heard utilizing drone footage and looking at lap times like that. But you also mentioned adjusting yourself out of the ballpark. For the casual racing fan who's never really turned a wrench on a vehicle, how easy is that for you to overthink a setup on any given night? I'm sure that there's a million adjustments you can make on a race car throughout an evening, and it's easy to overthink it. But just how easy and how tempting is it sometimes, I guess, to you know I really feel like I could fix this corner. It could be really good. I'm sure there's been a million different ways that you've thought about changing a car, and then that's maybe even set you back as opposed to helping you.
Yeah, well, there's like 101 ways to accomplish anything on these cars. Like, there's not just like one way. Like, if the car feels loose, it's not just, put a turn a wedge in the shocks. You can do different things with different offset rams, spacers, you know, you can change shocks, and there's just so many options on these cars, and it's extremely easy to kind of get yourself out of the ballpark. And you might just not be thinking clearly. Like, you go out in the heat race and it's a really heavy track and the car is super tight and you're in position and you can't really run an optimal line for your setup. So, you're frustrated. You started on the front row, you fell back, say, a couple spots. It's happened to us. We started on the pin and finished like fifth in a heat race, and you're kicking yourself, and you're like, oh, I can't go out there and drive it like that. And you make some changes, you loosen the car up, and then you roll out there, and 10 laps into the feature, the track is completely black, slick, and now you're spinning your tires, and you're just going back every lap. So there's just so many ways that you can adjust these cars. And even if you read the Bicknell book for different conditions on these cars, they have a big list of things that you can change. And it's kind of a give or take. Each adjustment you do, you might gain in a place, you might lose in a place, and just really finding what kind of hits for how you drive and what's going to work out there is like extremely difficult. But when you hit that, you feel like the car is unstoppable.
Absolutely. You mentioned your family as well throughout this interview. Take us through kind of your racing roots, because you're a guy that I don't really know too much about your story. And I myself, even being like, I'm not relatively new to Maryville at this time, but in terms of, you know, my broadcasting career, you're the McKay that I know. But obviously, you mentioned your dad, you mentioned your grandfather. Talk to us about your racing roots and how it got from whoever started racing in your family to you being a racer yourself.
Yeah, so kind of starting with the old man, my grandfather. He raced in the late 50s, early 60s. He raced for years in the late model division, kind of right when Pete was coming up with late models and going through. He actually moved in with my grandmother because he brought his first race car home, and his parents said, "You're not parking that pile of junk in my driveway." And he said, "Well, I'm going to find somewhere else to live then." He just always wanted to do it. He always liked cars. And then mid 70s, he tried his crack at modified, but he was starting up his sheet metal business at the time. And he had a young family, so kind of life gets in the way. He sells off the car. And then really nothing happens racing wise in my family. And when I was young, I wanted to race go karts as soon as I could. And, my mother was kind of nervous. It's, it's racing, it's kind of dangerous. And at the time, I was playing baseball pretty competitively, and we were on a travel team. We played over on a travel team in Buffalo for a year. We played travel here, and up until high school, I was getting pretty good at that, getting into the higher levels of baseball and really training. And I thought that was something I wanted to do. And unfortunately, being a young, dumb kid, I broke my leg riding my BMX bike, and I broke it pretty good. So I really couldn't play the physical sports anymore. And I was kind of bummed out. And my grandfather kind of saw that as an opportunity to go around everyone in the family. And I came home from school one day and there was a go kart sitting in the driveway. I said, "We're going Maryville, we're going racing." So we started out kind of late in the go kart ages, but it's kind of neat. We were racing with, like Dylan Davidson and Jordan Costco, Alex Riley, Tyler Winger, like some of these guys who have done, really well for themselves in the bigger divisions. And I got hooked. Like that became my personality. Everything went away. We were racing. Go karts were kind of tough for us. I was a bigger kid. Um, we were always 50, 60 pounds over the minimum weight limit, sorry, with no lead on the cart. So we're kind of at a disadvantage there. And I actually traded a guitar I had for a 99 Honda Civic that was already ready to go for an Enduro. And I brought that home. I had the guy drop it off without telling anybody. My grandfather looked at it and he said, "You're not going on the track without a roll cage." So we built the roll cage in it, ran one enduro, and I'm like, that's it. I'm finding a mini stock.
Mm.
There's no going back once you get on the big track. So we kind of jumped in the mini stock, and we had a Ford Tempo for a season. We bought that off the Marmots as well. It was a good car, but I didn't like the front wheel drive. I knew I wanted to move up. I wanted the rear wheel drive experience. So I found a good deal on a Mustang mini stock from Trevor Young. He runs crate sprints at Oswego now.
Mhm.
And I explained to him what I was trying to do, and he was extremely helpful with getting us into kind of a competitive mini stock. He gave us all of his setup notes, all of his spare parts, all of his help, and yeah, we ran that car for all right until COVID. So 20, we learned everything the hard way there too. I mean, I put 13 motors in that car over 5 years of racing. We were building our own motors, kind of a low budget team, but we also jumped into it like head first. We were running Merrittville, Oswego, and Humberstone weekly, and like that's the life I wanted.
Mhm.
So yeah, then the opportunity came to get into sportsman, and you know I always liked the sportsman class, and you get to watch all the guys. Like I grew up watching like Mallory race in it, and you have Chevalier, and you have Greg Panante, and you have all these big names out there that are ripping around. The next thing you know, you're out there with them, and kind of like Taylor said, it's almost surreal when you're racing against these guys you've been watching as like a little kid, and you know it was a kind of a reality check because it's like, yeah, this is way faster. These guys know what they're doing. We don't, and we just kept working at it. We had a couple people that really stepped up and kind of helped us with that. The first person that came to ever scale one of our sportsman cars was Mark Armstrong, and that's he's related to the Pachowskis,
Yep.
and he came over. He brought scales over, he brought shocks over, and kind of gave us a baseline setup, and that was a huge help. And then yeah, we just had so many other people help us, like Fred and Luke Carlton have been huge. You know, like they would give us tires. Luke's been over to our pit a bunch this season trying to help us dial in our carburetor and our motor, trying to dial back some of those big fireballs that we've been shooting all season. And just these guys that you grew up watching, to have support from them, that's huge. And yeah, I think it's kind of how we started and how we're going, and we're planning on continuing as long as I can, really.
Absolutely, and we hope to see you out there for a long time. Something I've grown to love, especially, is the unique look of your race car. The pink frame, always the them has been a great looking ride for as long as I've been watching you and covering you in Sportsman. So, talk to us a little bit about where the color scheme came from and the choice of the pink frame.
So the deal with the pink frame was when I moved up, my grandmother, she was really worried. It's a lot faster. She's always worried when we were racing. And she said, if you're going to race there, there's two rules. I have to see you, and everyone else has to see you. So we had to come up with something that was bright. And I sat down with my girlfriend, and I'm like, I'm at a loss here. I've always ran like either black chassis or white in the Mustang. And she's like, well, what if we did hot pink and teal and black? And I'm like, oh, don't you think we're going to get made fun of? And she's like, if you get fast enough, how can they make fun of you? And I'm like, you know
Mhm.
what? We'll do it. And yeah, we just got the chassis powder coated pink, and we kind of stuck with it. And, now we're kind of known as the pink car that's out at Merrittville weekly. And, you got a bunch of people on the grandstand sides that the little kids are like running up because they can pick our car out so easy. And, we're kind of stuck with that now. And I would have never thought to do it if my girlfriend didn't kind of lead me towards that. And now I've just kind of embraced it. And yeah, we're the pink car.
Absolutely. It is a beautiful ride and it's unique, like you say, easy to spot. It's I gotta say, selfishly, it's an announcer's dream. Can always know when you're moving through the field one way or the other, or God forbid you end up in an accident. You're easy to spot as well as one of the drivers that I'm like, oh, who's involved? Oh yeah, I see pink. That's got to be McKay. But ultimately, it is really cool, and I wish more drivers thought the way you thought, and or well, I guess thought the way your grandmother thought, where you had to be more visually seen, because it is a great way to stand out and great way to build that fan base, like you say, and get people's attention. Dan, what's one thing, we're gonna leave it off with this, but what's one thing that maybe you would want race fans to know? You're not one of those guys that's down on the front stretch all the time, getting the TV time, so to speak, because you're in victory lane all that often. You kind of quietly built this program. You're a regular runner. You're one of the more experienced guys in sportsman at this point, since the youth movement has started to kind of roll in. Oh, you mentioned Greg Penante, and now you got Chevalier's kid there. You got Penante's kid there. A lot of guys that you grew up watching. Now you're racing against their kids. What's one thing the fans should know about you and your operation that maybe doesn't get enough love and attention?
That's it's a really great question. I think the biggest thing that we kind of want to make known is like we're out here for the love of the sport, and we want to do well, but we want to see other guys do well. And I always say my trailer is open to anybody, any parts that I have that can get a guy out there. And really, that's I kind of grew up with the old man telling me that's how it used to be, and I really want to bring that back. Uh, you know, if I can help a guy get out there and run, I will. If someone's having trouble with their car and they want to call me, yeah, like that's the biggest thing. Like we're out here, we want to win races, we want to do well, but we also want to see the other guys do well. And I think some of that comes from our early on struggles in racing, and just some of the people that stepped up to help us. We kind of want to pay that back to them, and yeah, it's just we're in it for the love of it, and we want to make sure that everyone can race each week, and whatever we can do to help people, we will definitely will.
Absolutely. That's a great attitude to have. And it's now you can say it's a winning attitude as well. So congratulations on the big win Saturday night. Keep it rolling. Daniel McKay on the Southern Ontario Dirt Show podcast.